क्या लगता है मार्केट?
Most of the sectors are operating at decadal high margins right now. So if these companies or these sectors do not do well, so it basically weighs on Nifty. So clearly this is not a debate between large caps and mid versus small caps. One thing is common, that they are saying that, yeah, we have seen this movie before. I don't think there is a terminal value risk in IT.
Can you break down this mantra for us?
One metric that does it all is return on invested capital. There are 4 tenets to investing.
How do you screen for company? Can you tell me some of the best hits and some of the misses in your portfolio?
Tips music. So the business was making some 400% ROIC.
Let's say there's a young analyst watching this show, right? Is there one piece of advice, one book or one person that you would recommend them to follow? Hello viewers, and welcome to the Seco Wealth podcast, where we sit down with independent thinkers from the market. We have a very special guest with us today. He goes on Twitter by the name Unknown Market Wizards, and what makes him rare is the ability to do both: reading the market, the macro, the themes that can play out ahead, and identifying stocks to play that theme. He's a structural engineer by qualification. He's worked in India and the Nordics, and in September 2025, he quit his career and became a full-time investor. Welcome to the show, Kamlesh.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Akshat. Thanks for having me. And I have known you for some time now, so it's always good to connect with people who have to discuss the process of investing. So yeah, good to be here. Hoping for a good conversation with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the first question that our viewers will have is, what has your journey been like? You were an engineer, and then you got into investing full time. So can you run us through your journey?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I was a engineer by qualification, and I have practiced structural engineering for almost 15 years. And investing, as you start with here as a personal finance. So initially, when you start making money, you look for avenues where you can put your savings to work. So that's how I started. And
And which year was this?
so I graduated in 2009. So after
Okay.
some period, I was investing through mutual funds and FDs and everything. And
Okay.
slowly, what happens? One good thing that happened was that I had a habit of reading. So I also picked up investing related books. And slowly, I read most of the popular investing books, the books about legendary investors, their processes, and everything. And also, there was a lot of content available on the internet. Now, for an example, if you look at Ashwath Damodaran he has a good content, great content on YouTube. So if you have to build your corporate finance understanding from the basics, so that is probably a very good place to be. And also there were a lot of bloggers, so I slowly started following them, and every time I was consuming their information, the knowledge that they were sharing, I was trying to implement it in my investing. So slowly and with some trials and errors, basically I was able to form a kind of investing framework for myself. So this is how it started, and over the years, basically there were many successes, many failures, and eventually last year I decided to step away from my engineering career, and I took investing as a full-time job right now. So this is what I'm doing. So far, so good.
Fantastic. I think that's a journey that a lot of people aspire to have.
Yeah.
So let's dive straight into the topic, which is क्या लगता है market? What are your
Alright.
views ahead? Because you've been quite vocal about your opinions on Nifty and the sectors underlying.
Yeah.
So can you run us through what you think will work ahead? What is your general overall opinion right now?
Okay. So if we the earning season is almost through, and overall in the broader market, earnings have been pretty decent. So uh, Nifty has a little divergence with the rest of the market. And if we start with Nifty, so Nifty has delivered some single digit 8-9% of median PAT growth in this quarter. And this is not the first quarter. This was the eighth consecutive quarter where Nifty has delivered single digit PAT growth.
So when you say Nifty, you mean the Nifty 50.
Nifty 50, yeah.
Right. So for the interest of our viewers, uh, especially those who are listening to this for the first time, Nifty 50 represents roughly the top 50 companies by free float market cap. And of course, there are some more nuances, but so to say, these are the top 50 companies by size of freely available shares in the market. and then there's Nifty 100, there's Nifty 500. So there are multiple indices available in the market. We are going to be talking a little bit in depth, I think, about Nifty 50 and Nifty 500
Yeah.
and the comparison.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so let us walk through the earnings by each indices. So Nifty has delivered single digit PAT growth. This has been its consecutive quarter, as I said. If we look past Nifty, so if we look at Nifty Next 50, which is the next 51 to 100 companies, so that has delivered some 20% median PAT growth. So clearly, this is not a debate between large caps and mid versus small caps, because Nifty Next 50 is large caps,
Right.
and if you look at the sectors that are working very well, or the parts of economy that are doing very well right now,
Hmm.
I mean, most of the sectors or companies will find representation in next 50 as well. For an
Right.
example, let's say what part of economy or sectors are doing well at the moment. So metals are doing well. So metal ka cycle chal raha hai.
Right.
Aluminum, copper prices are going up. A lot of metal companies are also there in Nifty 50 as well as in Nifty
Right.
Next 50, right?
Right.
Then there is renewable sector. Renewables में energy जो government के clean energy targets हैं. So there is a lot of work going on. काफ़ी private capex भी हो रहा है इसमें.
Right.
For example, Adani Green, and so a lot of capacities are coming in for renewables. That is doing very well. If
Right.
you look at defense and the government capex related things, the order book story जो हम बोलते हैं. So if you look at BEL, HAL, solar industries, then there are shipbuilding, coastal infra पे काम हो रहा है. So a lot of companies like Mazagon Dock,
Yeah.
so these have done well. So a lot of these companies also find representation in large caps. So that is there. उसके अलावा अगर आप देखेंगे तो consumption has picked up, maybe because of GST or any other reason, but a lot of consumption companies have done well. For instance, Nestle has done well, Britannia has done well, Trent has done well, Titan has done well, Varun Beverages have done well. So consumption overall has done well, and a lot of companies are there in Nifty as well as Nifty Next 50.
In fact, the names that you mentioned, Nestle and some of the other FMCG names, are also there in the Nifty 50, right?
Yeah.
So if they've done well, yet Nifty has done single digit PAT growth.
Mhm.
So is that what you're trying to say, that there are parts of the Nifty 50 which are really pulling it down? That
Yeah, so basically it depends on the EPS contribution.
Okay.
So if you look at Nestle, Nestle has actually delivered very good 26% PAT growth in this quarter. So
Wow.
for a large cap, it is pretty good. But if you look at their quarterly profit after tax, that is 1100 crore. So it does not do much for Nifty. If you compare this to SDFC ka quarterly PAT is 21,000 crore. That
Right.
moves the needle for Nifty. So the thing is that Nifty is a kind of a top heavy index where the weightage of these sectors like private banks, in general banks, or large cap IT or Reliance, it is very high. It is almost close to 40-50%. So if these companies or these sectors do not do well, so it basically weighs on Nifty. That is why it is happening. And if you look at overall, let's say हम consumption की बात कर रहे थे, तो इसके बाद let's say we talk about the credit cycle, because now it is credit cycle is also picking up. So a lot of large cap NBFCs have done well. Bajaj Finance है, Cholamandalam है, Bajaj Housing Finance hai. So all these are large caps also, right? And then there is, if you go to mid caps, small caps, micro caps, the story is same. The median PAT growth is somewhere around 18, 19, 20% on indices level मैं बोल रहा हूँ. So that is there. और उसके बाद then there is mother of all themes which is working right now, that is power and electrification. So what happens is कि आप देखें कि data centers की डिमांड देखो आप, या आप ईवी की डिमांड्स देखो, या आप एयर कंडीशनर्स की डिमांड देखो. इन ऑल ऑफ दिस वन लिंक इज कॉमन, दैट इज दैट द पावर कंजम्पशन इज गोइंग अप एंड द इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन डिमांड इज गोइंग अप. सो इसमें जो है ज़्यादातर कंपनीज दैट फाइंड रिप्रेजेंटेशन इन मिड कैप्स. बेसिकली यहाँ पर जो है सबसे ज़्यादा फ्रेंजी है इस टाइम पे. सो द कंपनीज लाइक GE Vernova, CG Power, all these companies are there. Also some of the maybe next 50 companies. But overall the point that I'm trying to make is that broader market mein earnings are very strong. Nifty mein is just that some of the few sectors are there that are not working at the moment, so which is basically pulling down Nifty.
So is it safe to say that you are more bullish on an Nifty 500 x Nifty 50?
Yeah, obviously that's the thing. And but आपको थोड़ा margin of safety and everything you will have to look at it, because what we have so far talked about is the earnings growth. We have not talked about the valuations, because
Right.
some of the capital goods companies in mid cap space are trading at 100 times earnings. So in my experience, you make money in capital goods when you buy them at 10, 20 times earnings, right? So that is the thing. But overall, the earnings growth, and I think it is visible. It is not going to go away very soon.
Okay.
So that is the thing. But इसके साथ there is also a caveat that I want to put here कि अगर आप कोविड के बाद से इंडियन मार्केट का जो बुल मार्केट है उसकी जर्नी अगर आप देखो, यू पिक एनी कंपनी and you will compare the margins pre-COVID and post-COVID or right now, you will see a stark difference. So this whole rally from COVID to now, or maybe 2 years ago, because in last 2 years nothing much have happened, but whatever has happened, it has happened due to the margin expansion. जो top line growth थी, that was not that high. The margins have expanded, and to some extent that, in fact, barring few sectors like private banks or IT,
Hmm.
most of the sectors are operating at decadal high margins right now.
At
So
decadal high margins.
decadal high
Okay.
margins. So there is a risk of mean reversion in margins. So for an example, what could be an event? जैसे अभी war हुआ है, तो
Right.
now there is input cost inflation will be there.
Yes.
So upcoming quarters में क्या होगा कि one thing will be certain, that is the pressure on the gross margins.
Right.
तो आपके gross margins पे pressure आएगा. So maybe we can hope, we cannot predict, but we can hope that this sales growth can compensate for the gross margin compression, or in general the margin compression
Right.
that is going to happen.
So we'll specifically try to understand your view on banking as a sector, right? So I think the sector has multiple plays. So there are your large private banks, you have your PSUs, and then you have your smaller NBFCs. Where do you see value? Do you even see value in the sector right now? And I'm asking this because we just understood that this plays a large role in the Nifty 50, which is where a lot of the passive flows are going, a lot of the large cap fund flows are going into. What is your take on that?
So let's first start with the problems. हम valuation उसके बाद देखेंगे. Let's start कि क्या problems है. तो first of all, the thing with the banking sector right now is that the competitive intensity in this sector is basically completely different from what it used to be, let's say in pre-COVID times. So pre-COVID times में PSU banks के अगर आप देखोगे तो balance sheets were quite fragile. They were not as aggressive. Now they are a proper contenders. Their asset quality as well as their balance sheets are as good as large private banks, if not better, right? Then there are large scale NBFCs. Bajaj Finance is there, Cholamandalam is there. So these are also competing with large private banks.
Right.
And then there is a lot of FDI money coming into the banking space. जैसे अभी MUFG has invested in Shriram Finance and
Sammaan Capital,
Sammaan Capital में
RBL
IFC.
Bank.
Yeah, so there are RBL Bank. Manappuram, Bain Capital has invested in Manappuram. Warburg Pincus has invested in IDFC First. So these are only recent FDI money that has come to this sector. So there is a lot of crowd. I mean, there is a lot of a lot of competition in this space right now. And second thing that is with the banks is that deposits are not very easy to come by. So deposits के लिए बहुत फाइट हो रही है. So अभी जैसे कॉन्टेक्स्ट के लिए मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि LDR is loan deposit ratio of the banking system is 82%, which is near to all time high.
Right.
So loan deposit ratio is 82%. What it means is that you have raised 100 rupees of deposits and you have lent 82 rupees as loans. तो आपका deposit is basically your inventory and loans are what you are selling.
Right.
So आप ऐसे सोचो कि अगर sales growth is outpacing inventory growth, so at some point what will happen is you won't have enough inventory to sell, so we'll have to slow down. So this is what is happening. You can lend but your deposit growth is not picking up. So उसके लिए क्या होता है कि one of the good mental models in banks are always is कि जब भी LDR high होता है, it hurts banking margins. Why? Because now you have to raise deposits क्योंकि आपकी inventory deplete हो गई है.
Right.
अब उसके लिए आपके deposits के लिए fight हो गई, और fight हो गई तो you will have to offer high rates and then the NIM compression will be there, net interest margin will compress, which is what is happening right now. So ये एक दो चीज़ें हैं. Then there is another thing that is happening right now is with the balance of payment situation. तो इसको एक simple उसमें समझ लेते हैं कि India is a net importer country, so we are always in need of dollars to pay for something like crude, right? So dollars का net outflow होता है, which is called the current account deficit. But usually it is taken care by the capital account inflows.
Right.
So बाहर से जो remittances आते हैं या जो foreign institutional money आता है, that usually take care of this current account deficit. But अभी क्या हो रहा है कि when these current account inflows are weak, which is the case right now, foreign money is not coming to India, उससे क्या होता है कि नियर टर्म में डॉलर की डिमांड बढ़ जाती है.
Hmm.
When the dollar goes up, पिछले साल rupee was 84, this time rupee is 96.
Right. Yeah.
So जब डॉलर बढ़ जाता है तो इम्पोर्टर को तो अपना बिल पे करना है,
Hmm.
राइट? सो दे विल आस्क कमर्शियल बैंक टू गिव देम डॉलर्स. तो जब डॉलर रिजर्व बैंक का को वापस से रिप्लेनिश करना होता है तो दे विल हैव टू बाय डॉलर्स एट हायर प्राइस.
Right.
So this basically takes liquidity out of the system. So
Out of the banking system.
out of the banking system, and basically in a way it hurts their lending capacity. So this is what
Right.
is happening. But having said that, one of the two things that I can say is that कुछ चीज़ें इसमें ट्रांजिटरी हैं, जैसे balance of payment situation, and this will normalize at some point, right? When we'll get capital account inflows, this will normalize. निम में भी ये है कि इट साइकिल थिंग, अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट घटते हैं बढ़ते हैं देन यू नो निम पे उसके हिसाब से इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है. सो ऑल्सो दीज आर ट्रांजिटरी थिंग्स, दीज कैन बी सॉल्व, दीज आर सॉल्वेबल थिंग्स. सो इसके बारे में इतना कोई स्ट्रक्चरल रिस्क नहीं है. बट व्हाट आई एम नॉट श्योर अबाउट इज द कॉम्पिटिटिव लैंडस्केप.
Overall, so I understand this impacts the private banks more than some of the smaller NBFCs. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, definitely. I think what we are talking about is that this, in fact, even the large cap NBFCs are doing well at the moment. So the problem is more with these large private banks, which have become so big that it is not possible to grow at 15-20% anymore. Or even if they grow at, let's say, 15%. So they have come from, let's say, 4-5 times price to book to these 2 times or below 2 times price to book.
Right.
So maybe if they continue to grow at 15%, which may or may not happen, I don't know. But the re-rating thing, the price to book going back to the 4-5 times, 4 times or 3 times seems unlikely. So यहाँ पर अगर कुछ होगा भी in terms of investment, so probably that will be just the growth that they are getting, no multiple re-rating. That's my view.
Got it. And we'll move now to the other large constituent of the Nifty 50, which is your IT sector, right? And that's the talk of the town. I think as we speak, there is chatter about it being a contrarian investment right now.
Yeah.
Because it has taken quite a lot of beating in the last year because of the risks of artificial intelligence and generally, I think this sector has been at the negative end for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
What are your views on this sector?
All right. So देखिए IT में there are 2-3 things. The first risk is, first of all, I don't think there is a terminal value risk in IT. I
Okay.
personally think that. इसमें जो 2-3 प्रॉब्लम्स है वो क्या हो रही हैं कि द फर्स्ट प्रॉब्लम इज द हेडकाउंट मॉडल.
Right.
अगर LLM is to write most of the code, then what to do with these many resources,
Hmm.
right? Second is the labor cost arbitrage. ये हमेशा होता है कि whenever there is a technology threat, तो ये होगा कि भाई इंडिया का लेबर कॉस्ट आर्बिट्राज will go away.
Right.
Third is what happens to the long term maintenance contracts that India gets, the Indian IT companies get. तो इसमें एक चीज़ क्लियर है कि whenever you talk to the whenever you hear any industry expert or the management, one thing is common that they are saying that, yeah, we have seen this movie before. So
Okay.
this is true to some extent. So let's rewind back to Y2K, where it all started. So kind of that was the inflection point for Indian IT. So हुआ क्या था कि there was a millennial glitch that global companies had to solve overnight. So
Right.
Indian companies ended up getting large global contracts for Y2K remediation.
Right.
तो वैसे तो it was one time fix, but वही होता है कि आपके clients के साथ एक बार contacts बन जाते हैं, then work keeps coming.
Right.
So that was kind of the inflection point, and Indian IT companies were a big beneficiary of it.
Right.
फिर next threat, let's say अगर हम we talk about the next threat, that was SAP. SAP was a threat. So
Right.
SAP, the promise of SAP was that that there will be one standardized system where you can run your entire business.
Right.
तो purchase, HR, finance, everything will be at one place. So इससे risk क्या था कि the risk was that then what happens to the custom software developers, right? But actually what ended up happening was that Indian IT companies became the largest SAP implementation partners in the world.
Right.
Why? Because every company is different. हर company के legacy processes हैं, systems हैं, and SAP is not a plug and play system, plug and play software that you can put there. So SAP implementation was a big thing. So you will have to customize it according to
Each organization.
each organization, their systems, and integrate it with their processes.
Right.
So this was another moment where IT companies basically turned crisis into opportunity.
Right.
हम और कोई एक ऐसा इवेंट लेते हैं जैसे क्लाउड वाज अ थिंग. तो क्लाउड माइग्रेशन जब हो रहा था तो Actually, what was happening, उनके physical servers होते थे, they used to have their own IT ecosystem,
Right.
maintenance के लिए लोग होते थे. Then came these what do we call
AWS.
AWS हो गया,
Right.
Microsoft हो गया. So what they did was they actually put lot of data center capacities, they put lot of servers, और उन्होंने बोला कि यार आप ये सब कर क्यों रहो, हमसे रेंट कर लो.
Right.
So basically it was a win-win model. But again the threat was कि ये पूरा ecosystem this will go away. ये सारा business तो चला जाएगा ना. So that was the threat. But again, just like SAP implementation, Indian IT companies again became the cloud implementation partners, cloud migration partners, sorry. Because again, जो कंपनी 20-25 साल से कोई सिस्टम प्रोसेस फॉलो कर रही है, दे कैनॉट स्विच टू क्लाउड ओवरनाइट. अगर आपको डेटा माइग्रेट करना है, लेट्स से, सो यू विल हैव टू रिव्यू और रीडिजाइन योर सिक्योरिटी आर्किटेक्चर. समबडी हैज टू डू इट. सो द सेम काइंड ऑफ थ्रेट इज हैपनिंग विद द एआई राइट नाउ. तो अभी थ्रेट क्या है बेसिकली कि देयर इज अ टेक्नोलॉजी that will basically automate everything, and the labor cost arbitrage and headcount model will go away. But the thing is कि somebody has to implement AI into the brownfield enterprise system. So Nandan Nilekani had said one thing कि it is very easy to use generative AI to build a greenfield enterprise structure. अगर आपको सब कुछ स्क्रैच से बिल्ड करना है तो प्रॉब्ली यू कैन डू इट विद एआई. लेकिन आपको इसको फोर्स फिट करना है एग्जिस्टिंग ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में विच आर नॉट गोइंग टू चेंज देयर सिस्टम्स एंड प्रोसेसेस. सो अगेन देयर विल बी people who will be implementing these.
Right.
And if there is a need of people, then comes again the cost arbitrage model, क्योंकि आपको सस्ते रिसोर्स चाहिए, right?
Right.
So that is the promise I think of Indian IT companies that I think that should be there. अगर आप इन्फोसिस की मैनेजमेंट व्यू देखते हैं और कमेंट्री देखते हैं तो व्हाट दे आर सेइंग इज कि बाय 2030 देयर विल बी फॉर इंडियन आईटी कंपनीज रिलेटेड टू AI implementation related work, the total addressable market in this market is total to about 300 to 400 billion dollars. Just for context, Indian IT services का size अभी $250 billion है. So probably they will end up expanding their TAM, but, and it's a big but, it is not even a assumption now, it is a reality that in the near term AI will be net deflationary. What I mean by that is कि I'm sure that these organizations are preparing their workforce for this AI related work, but near term में clear है कि they have to pass all the efficiency gains. इनकी contract value shrink हो जाएंगे because of the large part of the work will go to the automation.
Right.
So now if you see all these big large cap IT companies, they are guiding for 1%, 2%, 3% kind of constant currency growth
Right.
next year.
Right.
So in near term, it will be net deflationary. So whether it is a good opportunity or not, I cannot say that. But if you ask me, is there a terminal risk? I don't think there is a terminal risk, because eventually they will end up getting some work because of the same labor cost arbitrage model.
Got it. Okay. So net you're saying this similar to the other constituents in Nifty going through a bad time. IT also seems to be going through a temporary bad time.
Yes, yeah.
And there may be light at the end of the.
Yeah, but we don't know how long it takes. So I don't think that makes anything positive for Nifty at the
Understood.
moment. But yeah, IT services now, because people are saying that this will finish. This will be the end of Indian IT services. I don't think this is the end of IT services.
Right.
There is no terminal risk, because you always need people to implement these technologies. And by the way, this is the nature of the technology. You will have to keep on your toes, otherwise you will get replaced. That is how they have been navigating over the course of 25 years.
Right.
So yeah.
So to summarize, this is not the first time Indian IT is going through headwinds, and we have to closely watch them for the next year or two.
Yeah.
But things cannot be written off for this sector.
Yeah, cannot be written off, definitely.
Got it.
And especially at the multiples they are trading, and no growth multiples.
Got it.
Yeah.
And move to how you've actually been picking stocks, right? I think your pinned tweet on your profile says that the mantra is to buy well-run, well-financed, efficient businesses at the trough of the cycle. So can you break down this mantra for us?
Okay. So well-run थोड़ा subjective है investing में, because many people can say that even TCS is not a well-run business for what is happening in the business right now. They are with the buyback thing, and they are diversifying into data centers. At the same time, somebody might say that Indiabulls Housing Finance, which is Sammaan Capital right now. That is a well-run business because they have new promoter, and this new promoter has basically kitchen sink the legacy books, right?
I think this quarter they've almost wiped out all the
All the
legacy bad loans and
bad loans, yeah, everything,
right.
everything. So ये थोड़ा सब्जेक्टिव है. So what is a good business, what is a bad business, ये हर किसी का अपना different definition है. So what we do is we take the Buffett's word for it. So
Okay.
Warren Buffett ने अपने annual shareholder letters में he has basically categorized businesses into 3 categories: good, great, and gruesome.
Good, great, and
Gruesome.
gruesome. Okay.
Yes. And he has basically only one metric on which he basically tests whether a business is good or gruesome. So इसको एक example से समझ लेते हैं. So let's say there are 2 businesses, both are earning same operating cash. So let's say both businesses are making 100 rupees of net operating profit after tax. By the way, I'm saying net operating profit after tax. I'm not saying profit after tax.
Not
Because
bad.
not PAT. I'm saying no PAT.
Okay.
Because basically what we are doing is we are looking for cash flow proxy. Because cash flow is volatile in general.
Right.
So what we do is we take a proxy. So
Okay.
can this proxy be PAT? No, because PAT में interest cost होती है. So
Right.
two companies having same PAT may have completely different interest cost. So apple to apple comparison नहीं होगा. Let's say one company is more levered than the other,
Right.
but both are making same PAT. So it is not a apple to apple comparison. Can we take EBITDA? We cannot, because एक सर्विस कंपनी है, एक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनी है. दोनों का डेप्रिसिएशन एंड अमोर्टाइजेशन वुड बी डिफरेंट.
Right.
So that is also not a apple to apple comparison. Can we take EBIT? Yes. Can we take NOPAT? Yes. The only difference is EBIT is a pre-tax number, NOPAT is a post-tax number.
So NOPAT is EBIT minus tax.
Tax, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you are saying ROC, so you are referring to EBIT.
Okay.
If you are saying ROIC, you are referring to NOPAT. So
Okay.
one is a pre-tax number, one is a post-tax number, but more or less you can do both.
Right.
ठीक है. तो लेट्स से कि 2 कंपनीज हैं, दोनों का NOPAT जो है वो 100 रुपीज़ है, एंड बोथ आर ग्रोइंग एट 10%.
Right.
सो अगर आप उनका P&L देखेंगे, इट वुड लुक समथिंग लाइक दिस: ईयर 1 100 रुपीज़,
Okay.
then 111, sorry 110, then 121,
Right.
and so on. So दोनों आइडेंटिकल लगेंगे. So how do you differentiate which one is a good business and which one is a bad business?
Right.
So the Buffett ये कहते हैं कि just ask कि how much capital you have invested to earn that 100 rupees of NOPAT.
Okay.
Right? So let's say business 1 has invested 500 rupees
Right.
to get this 100 rupees of operating cash. So उसका जो return on invested capital है, that would be 20%. 100 divided by 500.
500.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's say the second business invests 1000 rupees to get the same 100 rupees of NOPAT. So ROIC will be 10%.
10%.
Right.
Right.
अब हमने बोला कि both are growing at 10%.
Right.
Right. So इसका मतलब है कि if NOPAT या operating cash इस साल 100 rupees है, next year it will be 110. So incremental 10 rupees का return, incremental 10 rupees की earnings के लिए how much reinvestment the business has to make. So at 20%, out of that 100 rupees of operating cash, if I reinvest 50 rupees, I'll make 10 rupees extra, right?
Right.
20% multiplied by 50 rupees, I will make 10 rupees incremental profit.
Right.
तो आपने 100 रुपये आपने कमाए थे, उसमें से 50 rupees you reinvested back into the business, and rest you have 50 rupees as free cash flow.
Right.
दूसरे बिजनेस को 10 रुपये इंक्रीमेंटल अर्निंग के लिए इट हैज़ टू इन्वेस्ट 100% ऑफ इट्स ऑपरेटिंग कैश. 10% ROIC
Got it.
multiplied by 100 rupees of cash.
So if I've been somebody who's seeing the P&L statement of a company and I can judge ki this year it has done, let's say, 100 crore of PAT and next year it can do 120. You're saying that's not the best way to judge
Yes.
the growth. You're saying you need to also see the denominator.
Yes. Basically, you have to see what return on invested capital the business is generating, because that eventually tells you what will be the free cash flow of the business. And intrinsic value क्या होती है? It is basically the present value of all future cash flows,
Right.
discounted back to today. Right.
Right.
So ये एक मैट्रिक है जिस पे वॉरेन बफेट बोलते हैं कि देयर इज अ गुड बिजनेस. द गुड, अगर मैं ग्रूसम को भी हटा दूँ, गुड एंड बैड बिजनेस अगर आप सिंपल रखो, बिकॉज देन इट विल बी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. सो the simply what he's saying is that a good business is that business which earns very high return on invested capital.
Okay.
And a bad business is which earns very low return on invested capital. To explain this tweet, तो investing framework बड़ा cliched है because Buffett has popularized it, so you must have heard it many times. So काफ़ी popular है and everybody has heard about it. So इसमें basically 4 tenets हैं. There are 4 tenets to investing.
Okay.
The first is business tenet, the second is management tenet, the third is financial economics
Okay.
of the business, and the fourth is the price.
Okay.
So business tenet, basically business analysis जब आप करेंगे तो you will have to ask few questions. So first question is कि is this business simple enough to understand?
Right.
Right. So Buffett ये कहते हैं कि investing is not Olympic sport. Degree of difficulty does not count.
Right.
It does not have to be very difficult business. So इसीलिए जो वो circle of competence का concept है वो आता है.
Right.
You should be able to understand this business. If you are able to understand this business, and the second question you should ask is कि what are the long term prospects of the business. अब जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप मुझे बोलेंगे कि यार आईटीसी बहुत गिर गया है तो आई वोंट गेट एक्साइटेड बिकॉज
Right.
आईटीसी के लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स आई डोंट सी देयर आर गुड प्रोस्पेक्ट्स एटलीस्ट फॉर द सिगरेट बिजनेस. अब
Right.
जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इस साल जीएसटी जो है वो 40% लगा दिया टोबैको प्रोडक्ट्स ने गवर्नमेंट. एंड डब्ल्यू की जो रिकमेंडेशन है दैट इज इवेंचुअली इट शुड बी उनकी वो रिकमेंड करते हैं कि इट शुड बी 75%. सो इवेंचुअली वी आर गोइंग देयर.
Right.
एंड सेकंड थिंग इज कि इसका एक इलिसिट मार्केट है, एक पूरा पैरेलल ब्लैक मार्केट है या खुली सिगरेट या खुले टोबैको प्रोडक्ट्स है.
Right.
सो व्हेन दी tax is keep going up, so people do not stop consuming tobacco or smoking cigarettes. So they will basically downtrade. They
Right.
will opt for the cheaper options.
Correct.
So
Okay.
वो उनको ज़्यादा benefit होगा इसमें. तो this is kind of a sunset sector in my view. On the other hand, if you see a sunrise sector या जिसके लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स अच्छे हैं तो प्रॉब्ली आई विल से कैपिटल मार्केट बिजनेस.
Okay.
जैसे कैपिटल अगर आप कंपेयर करेंगे तो इंडिया का जो अभी टोटल म्यूचुअल फंड AUM है दैट इज़ अराउंड $1 ट्रिलियन. इंडिया की जीडीपी के हिसाब से अगर देखें तो अबाउट 20-25% ऑफ इंडियन जीडीपी.
Right.
एंड इफ़ यू लुक एट यूएस में जो म्यूचुअल फंड प्लस ETF, क्योंकि वहाँ ETF ज़्यादा पॉपुलर है, सो म्यूचुअल फंड प्लस ETF टोटल अगर आप AUM देखेंगे दैट इज़ अराउंड $40 ट्रिलियन. दैट इज़ मोर देन 100% ऑफ
Of the
जीडीपी.
GDP. Wow.
So then you can see that what kind of long term prospects we are talking about. Even if you look at wealth managers,
Right.
आप यहाँ कंपेयर करें अगर वहाँ से तो देयर विल बी अ डिफरेंस ऑफ 200 टाइम्स.
Right.
सेम गोज विथ एक कोई AMC बिजनेस आप ले लो. लेट्स से द बिगेस्ट AMC मेक्स $100 बिलियन के AUM है. वहाँ पर ब्लैक रॉक के $15 ट्रिलियन के हैं. हमारा पूरा म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री का AUM 1 ट्रिलियन है एंड द सिंगल कंपनी इज हैविंग 15 ट्रिलियन ऑफ
Wow.
assets, right? So that is a long term prospect. तो आपको सिंपल बिजनेस देखना है. देन उसके बाद सेकंड थिंग इज व्हाट आर द लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स एंड थर्ड थिंग इज इफ इट इज़ अ गुड बिजनेस, सिंपल बिजनेस एंड लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स अच्छे हैं तो व्हाट इज समथिंग दैट इज प्रोटेक्टिंग इट फ्रॉम द कॉम्पिटिशन, जिसको उन्होंने ही पॉपुलराइज्ड एज मोट.
Right.
सो इसको एक एग्जांपल से समझ लेते हैं. वन ऑफ माय फेवरेट इज गोल्ड लैंडिंग बिजनेस. ठीक है, गोल्ड लैंडिंग बहुत सिंपल बिजनेस है. लेट्स से यू आर इन नीड ऑफ मनी,
Right.
you have a collateral in gold, you go to a gold lender.
Right.
gold lender will appraise it. मान लीजिए वो उसको वैल्यू करते हैं 1 लाख रुपीज़ का गोल्ड है. ही विल गिव यू 65 रुपीज़ वर्थ ऑफ लोन.
Right.
ठीक है, 1 लाख रुपए के कोलेटरल पे ही विल गिव यू 65 रुपीज़ ऑफ गोल्ड लोन, सॉरी. एंड ही विल चार्ज यू अराउंड 18-20% yield. And you will be okay paying it because first of all you need the money and second it's a short tenure loan.
Right.
तो बहुत short tenure 2-3 महीने में the interest rate does not matter that much.
Right.
ठीक है, and then their cost of fund is 8-9%. तो जो वो source कर रहे हैं money that is around 8-9%. So इस पे जो net spread they are making that is around 10%. 18-20% yield है, 8-9% का cost of fund है. So they are making 10% spread, right? अब इसके बाद क्या है, इसमें खर्चे क्या है? ब्रांच चलाने का खर्चा है, गोल्ड को स्टोर करने का खर्चा है, एम्प्लॉयज़ का खर्चा है. सो द टोटल ओपेक्स कॉस्ट इन दिस बिजनेस इज अराउंड 4-5%. 10% के स्प्रेड में 4-5% आपका ओपेक्स में चला गया. देन लेंडिंग बिजनेस में क्रेडिट कॉस्ट होती है. इस बिजनेस में कोई क्रेडिट कॉस्ट नहीं है बिकॉज आपने कोलेटरल जो है वो 1 लाख रुपए पे लिया है एंड यू हैव गिवन ओनली 60,000 रुपीज़ ऑफ लोन.
Correct.
It is not impossible, but it is very unlikely for gold to come down 40% in a very short period.
Short period.
Even if it comes down by 40%, so you will still protect your principal.
Right.
So which is why the credit losses are rare in this business.
Right.
So net this is a 5-6% kind of return on asset business.
5-6% return on asset.
ROA. अब इसमें 3 या 4 टाइम्स का अगर आप लेवरेज लगा लो
Okay.
तो देन इट इज़ ए 18-20% ROE बिजनेस
ROE.
विच इज़ वेरी गुड फॉर अ लेंडिंग बिजनेस.
Right.
तो बिजनेस समझने में बिल्कुल ईजी है, इसमें कोई कॉम्प्लिकेशन नहीं है, राइट. अब हम इसके देखते हैं कि व्हाट आर द लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स. तो लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स के लिए आप देखोगे जो टोटल नेट हाउस होल्ड गोल्ड है इंडिया में दैट इज़ अराउंड 25,000
25,000 tons.
टन्स. तो इसकी वैल्यू ट्रिलियंस में होगी. आई डू
Right.
नॉट नो द एग्जैक्ट वैल्यू, बट इसमें ज़्यादातर जो लेंडिंग होती है दैट इज़ इन द इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर.
Right.
अगर उसमें से थोड़ा सा भी एक छोटा सा पोर्शन अगर इफ इट कम्स टू द फॉर्मल गोल्ड लैंडिंग सेक्टर, दैट इज itself is a huge, because trillions of, we are talking about trillions of dollars, right?
Right.
Trillions of rupees, sorry. So yeah, one of the other thing is it's a counter cyclical business. क्योंकि जब इकोनॉमी अच्छा नहीं करती है तो जो क्रेडिट के बाकी एवेन्यूज है वो बंद हो जाते हैं, बट यू हैव द कोलेटरल सो यू कैन स्टिल गेट द गोल्ड गुड
Got
गोल्ड. सो ओवरऑल अगर आप देखो ओवरऑल बिजनेस एनालिसिस में यू कैन सी दैट द बिजनेस इज सिंपल, लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स ठीक ठाक है.
Right.
नाउ द थर्ड क्वेश्चन इज कि व्हाट इज अ मोट. क्योंकि गोल्ड तो सबका सेम है, योर प्रोडक्ट इज रेप्लिकेबल, देयर इज नो मोट इन द प्रोडक्ट.
Yeah.
तो जो मोट है दैट इज इन द ट्रस्ट दैट यू हैव बिल्ड ओवर द ईयर्स. अगर आप देखोगे कि गोल्ड लैंडिंग में देर आर सो मेनी, इतना ज़्यादा कंपटीशन हो गया 2023 ऑनवर्ड्स, बट देर आर 1 or 2 पोस्टर बॉयज ऑफ गोल्ड लैंडिंग. इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट गोल्ड लेंडर्स सो एवरीबडी विल से मुथूट फाइनेंस और मनापुरम सेकेंड नंबर पे, राइट. सो ट्रस्ट है, देन देर इज़ अ वेरी बिग ब्रांच नेटवर्क. सो दीज
Right.
2 things आर द कॉम्पिटिटिव एडवांटेज दैट दे हैव. सो दिस इज काइंड ऑफ द बिजनेस एनालिसिस दैट यू हैव टू डू.
Okay.
अब इसके बाद हम सेकंड टेनेट पे चलते हैं, दैट इज़ दी मैनेजमेंट एनालिसिस. तो देखिए बिजनेस शुड बी सच दैट यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स इतनी स्ट्रांग होनी चाहिए कि इट डज नॉट मैटर हु रन्स द शो,
Okay.
बट स्टिल यू हैव टू डू दी मैनेजमेंट एनालिसिस क्योंकि कैपिटल एलोकेशन उनके हाथ में है. एंड सेकंड थिंग इज देयर एक्शंस एंड बिहेवियर्स कैन चेंज द कोर्स ऑफ व्हाट यू मेक इन द लॉन्ग रन
Correct.
फ्रॉम द बिजनेस,
Right.
राइट. तो इसका एक एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं. जैसे कैपिटल एलोकेशन में वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट आई कैन टेल यू इज एप्पल का एग्जांपल लेते हैं. तो एप्पल इन 2013 was available at very cheap multiple. It was trading at 12 times earnings.
2013.
2013.
Okay.
Okay. And the management realized that the stock is very cheap. So what they did was they started buying back aggressively.
Got it.
Right. So because ये भी एक capital allocation call है, right? If the business is throwing a lot of cash, so one of the things that you have to see is कि how they are allocating the capital. So they started buying back. Now think of this कि 2013 से 2023 तक over a period of 10 years the business earnings growth was 10%.
Okay.
So basically earnings जो है 3x हुई है बस 10 years में,
From 2000.
13 to 23,
Okay.
right. And the stock price ended up making 30% CAGR.
Wow.
Why? Because 10% आपको वहाँ से मिल गया
Earnings.
earnings से. Then the price to earning went from 12 to 30.
12.
2.5x आपको वहाँ से मिल गया. 3x from the price earnings, 2.5x from the price to earnings.
Right.
And they retired some 35-40% of the shares during this period
In form of buyback.
in form of buyback. So
Okay.
that ended up delivering another, उससे EPS बढ़ गया.
Right.
So that ended up adding another 1.6x.
Right.
So this is a good form of capital allocation that a management has to do. A bad example of capital allocation would be a recent example which I would say is Kaynes Technologies.
Okay.
तो Kaynes Technologies इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स मैन्युफैक्चरिंग स्पेस में है. तो ये जो मोबाइल वगैरह के जो PCBAs होते हैं वो बनाते हैं, प्रिंटेड सर्किट बोर्ड असेंबलीज. सो उनका बिजनेस बेसिकली इट वाज कैश फ्लो पॉजिटिव. अगर आप स्टैंड अलोन बेसिस पे देखेंगे तो EMS बिजनेस जो है वो कैश फ्लो पॉजिटिव है. इवन दिस ईयर दे हैव मेड 250 crore ऑफ कैश फ्लो फ्रॉम ऑपरेशंस
Okay.
इन दिस ईयर.
Okay.
बट व्हाट द मैनेजमेंट थॉट वाज दे सेड वी वांट टू बिकम अ प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड कंपनी. तो उन्होंने एक स्मार्ट मीटरिंग बिजनेस में एक कंपनी एक्वायर कर ली स्क्रमेको करके.
Okay.
नाउ दिस स्मार्ट मीटरिंग बिजनेस हैज सच पुअर वर्किंग कैपिटल इकोनॉमिक्स दैट राइट नाउ ये जो स्मार्ट मीटरिंग बिजनेस है दैट कंट्रीब्यूट्स ऑलमोस्ट 25% टू द टॉप लाइन ऑफ द बिजनेस, बट इट कंट्रीब्यूट्स 90% टू द रिसीवेबल्स. सो ऑल द कैश इज गॉन. स्टैंड अलोन लेवल पे देयर इज टोटल कैश डिस्ट्रक्शन. सो दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ बैड कैपिटल एलोकेशन.
Got it.
बिहेवियर एंड एक्शंस ऑफ मैनेजमेंट.
Okay.
सो एक दो एग्जांपल मैं आपको देता हूँ. फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे एक इंश्योरेंस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन प्लेटफॉर्म है, इट्स अ
Right.
पॉपुलर वन.
Right.
और बेसिकली व्हाट happened was, it's a recent example, they इनका एक डिस्क्लोजर आया दैट दे आर डूइंग अ QIP फॉर अ इंटरनेशनल एक्विजिशन,
Okay.
ठीक है, एंड मार्केट डिड नॉट लाइक इट. सो मे बी मार्केट की रीजनिंग ये थी कि यार इंडिया में इतनी ग्रोथ है, यू आर ग्रोइंग एट 40%, यहाँ इतना बड़ा टैम है, तो वाई आर यू, मे बी मार्केट थॉट दैट इट्स अ बैड कैपिटल एलोकेशन डिसीजन. So market started punishing it. So the stock price was coming down.
Right.
And after 1 week or so, they canceled the QIP.
Okay.
So basically, they were managing near-term stock price,
Ah.
and now they are dumping the shares and in a big quantity.
Okay. The
So,
promoters.
Promoters,
Okay.
yes. So that is something that leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Right.
Even if it is a good business, by the way, it is a very good business.
Right.
But the management's actions and behaviors also matter. And इससे पहले भी हुआ था कि they have a healthcare subsidiary. उसमें they have, कंपनी का तो उसमें जो स्टेक है, they have invested in the personal capacity in huge amount.
Okay.
So now this creates a conflict of interest, because when you have a capital allocation decision to make, you have a one insurance business, you have one healthcare
Right.
subsidiary. So obviously you will be biased because
Correct.
you have although you have stake here also, but here you have put a lot of money here in the personal capacity. Also, it tells you the affinity towards the shareholders or minority shareholders,
Right.
because they are directly shortchanging you, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the examples that you can think of about the management analysis.
Right. So
So-
we've covered business tenets. We've covered the management
Yes.
tenet.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Then we go to the financial economics. मैंने आपको एक छोटा एग्जांपल तो दे दिया था कि what is a good business. So basically one metric that does it all is return on invested capital,
ROIC.
right? ROIC. You can take it further and you can look at the incremental return on invested
Okay.
capital. So over a period of, let's say, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they have earned some operating earnings, operating cash, and they must have reinvested something back into the business. And what incremental
Right.
return they have made over that reinvestment, that is incremental ROIC. So let's say कि अगर आपका incremental ROIC 20% है,
Right.
and you have achieved it, basically you have done 80% reinvestment. So 20% incremental ROIC multiplied by 80% reinvestment rate,
Right.
that is 16%. This 16% is the compounding rate of your business. Intrinsic value आपके business की
हाँ.
16% पे compound हो रही है.
Yeah, because 100 becomes 116.
Yes.
And okay.
So basically ये आपका, if you have read the business, और business read करने के बाद if you are reasonably sure that these characteristics of the business,
Right.
that it will continue to earn these type of high return on invested capital, and these business will have enough opportunities to invest 80% back into the business, because
Right.
दोनों चीज़ें होनी चाहिए ना.
Yeah.
One, you have to be able to earn very high return on invested capital, and you should have enough avenues to reinvest
Right.
where you can earn high ROIC. So then I have some idea that this is earning 16%, say this is compounding at 16%.
Yes.
अब एक प्राइमर आपके दिमाग में है, and if you see this is a stable business, so then you can kind of price is accordingly. मतलब आपको पता है कि 16% अगर मेरी कंपाउंडिंग हो रही है and the business is stable right now,
Right.
so then you can make some, I mean intuitively I can say, अगर मैं DCF भी लगाने बैठूंगा तो that will be मतलब एक लॉन्ग प्रोसेस, बट इंट्यूटिवली आई कैन टेल कि दिस टाइप ऑफ बिजनेस आई विल हैप्पीली बाय इट एट 20-25 टाइम्स अर्निंग्स with such characteristics,
Right.
right? If this is stable, मतलब
Right.
if you have the predictability. So ये है इकोनॉमिक्स का, तो वी हैव डिस्कस्ड ऑलरेडी, इसको हम आगे डिस्कस करेंगे. बट द नेक्स्ट थिंग इज प्राइस या वैल्यूएशन.
Right.
तो आपने एक चीज़ देखी होगी कि मोस्ट एनालिस्ट व्हाट दे डू इज कि 3 सिनेरियो बनाएंगे: बुल केस, बेयर केस, बेस केस. सो बुल केस में दे विल स्लैप 25 times earnings, बेस केस में दे विल स्लैप 20 times earnings, बेयर केस में 15 times earnings. और ऐसा नहीं, मैंने भी किया है, बट दिस इज नॉट द राइट वे टू वैल्यू अ बिजनेस. क्योंकि जो भी आपका मल्टीपल है, दैट मल्टीपल, द प्राइस टू अर्निंग मल्टीपल, दैट इज अ शॉर्ट हैंड
Right.
फॉर अ लॉन्ग इन्वेस्टमेंट मेथड विच इज DCF, डिस्काउंटेड कैश फ्लो. उसके अंदर बहुत सारे assumptions हैं, जैसे कि व्हाट विल बी द लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट,
Right.
what will be the ROIC of the business in the long term. So what will be the cost of capital या opportunity cost. So these are the assumptions that are already built in the business. तो अगर मैं इसको प्राइस को ऐसे देखूं कि हम एक वाला एग्जांपल लेते हैं जो हमने गुड एंड ग्रेट बिजनेसेस के लिए लिया था. So the first business that was making 20% ROIC,
Right.
it was making 50% reinvestment.
Okay.
तो उसके पास बाद में जो फ्री कैश फ्लो बच रहा था दैट वाज 50 रुपीज़.
50 rupees.
तो अगर आप एक सिंपल फॉर्मूला लेते हैं विथ नो कॉम्प्लिकेशंस, आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट द DCF एंड ऑल,
Okay.
आई मीन यू शुड अंडरस्टैंड हाउ DCF वर्क, बट स्टिल एक सिंपल फॉर्मूले से अगर लेते हैं तो इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू इज बेसिकली अ फंक्शन ऑफ थ्री थिंग्स: फ्री कैश फ्लो, योर कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल एंड योर लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट्स.
Okay.
फ्री कैश फ्लो को अगर आप फर्दर ब्रेक डाउन करोगे तो इट विल बी फंक्शन ऑफ टू थिंग्स: योर लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट्स एंड ROIC. जैसे हमने क्या बोला था कि आपका जो नोपैट है वो 100 रुपया है, you are earning at 10%, you are growing at 10%,
Right.
and you are making 20% ROIC.
ROIC. Yeah.
So फ्री कैश फ्लो हमारा 50 रुपये निकला था उससे. सो देर इज अ फॉर्मूला डायरेक्ट,
Yeah.
यू कैन मतलब डिड्यूस इट फ्रॉम द प्रोसेस, एंड देर इज अ फॉर्मूला फॉर इट. सो ये दो तीन चीज़ें हैं जिस पर इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू डिपेंड करती है, राइट?
Right.
तो अगर मैं वो फर्स्ट बिजनेस को जो हमने फर्स्ट बिजनेस पहले डिस्कस किया था, अगर मैं उसका मल्टीपल निकालना चाहता हूँ तो व्हाट वुड इट बी? तो इट इज़ मेकिंग 50 रुपीज़ ऑफ फ्री कैश फ्लो,
Right.
ठीक है? एंड कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल इज़ नथिंग बट माई अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. जो मैंने अभी आपको एक बॉन्ड का एग्जांपल दिया था कि यू नो व्हेन इन इन्फ्लेशनरी इन्वायरमेंट बॉन्ड यील्ड्स गो अप, तो वो यही है कि आपके जो कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल है दैट इज गोइंग
Going
अप
up.
बिकॉज यू वांट हायर कॉम्पनसेशन.
Right.
सो लेट्स से आई वांट 12% कॉम्पनसेशन फ्रॉम दिस बिजनेस. मुझे लगता है कि 12% इन द लॉन्ग रन इज गुड फ्रॉम इक्विटी,
Right.
लेट्स से.
Right.
सो दैट इज माई अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. तो 50 रुपया मेरा फ्री कैश फ्लो है, 12% is my cost of capital, and I told you that the business is growing at 10%. The
Right.
long term growth rate अभी हम मान रहे हैं, just for example, this is, so your intrinsic value will be 50 rupees divided by your cost of capital minus your long term growth rates.
Okay.
ठीक है, सिंपल फॉर्मूला है. 50 रुपीज़ डिवाइडेड बाय बेसिकली 2%,
Okay.
क्योंकि 12% आपका कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल है, 10% आपका लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ रेट है.
Right.
तो 50 रुपीज़ डिवाइडेड बाय 2% विल बी 2500,
Right.
राइट? सो आपके बिजनेस की इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू 2500 है,
Right.
एंड आप ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट क्या बना रहे थे? 100 रुपीज़.
100.
सो योर मल्टीपल विल बी 25 डिवाइडेड 2500 डिवाइडेड बाय 100.
Right.
तो दिस बिजनेस विद दिस कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, द वारंटेड मल्टीपल इज 25.
Oh,
सो
okay.
उसके अंदर ये सारे ग्रोथ assumptions इनबिल्ट हैं कि दैट
Right.
दिस इज ग्रोइंग एट 10%, कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल इज 12%,
Right.
and the free cash flow is this much.
Right.
So these are the basically the shorthands for this long calculations.
Got
और ये एक्चुअली लॉन्ग कैलकुलेशन भी नहीं है, दिस इज वेरी सिंपलिस्टिक फॉर्मूला.
Right.
बट आप DCF करेंगे तो देन यू कैन मेक ए 3-stage मॉडल, एंड देन यू कैन अप्लाई सम टर्मिनल ग्रोथ रेट्स. एंड DCF में थिंग इज़ कि लोग बोलते हैं कि उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा फ्लक्चुएशन होता है, विद सेंसिटिव होता है बहुत ज़्यादा टू असम्पशंस, बट दैट इज़ एक्चुअली अ फीचर, नॉट अ बग.
Okay.
क्योंकि वहाँ पर ही बेसिकली आपको देखना है कि यू कैन मेक डिफरेंट सिनेरियोज
Right.
एंड सी व्हाट सूट्स इट द बेस्ट. सो मैं इसको एक एग्जांपल से बताता हूँ. जैसे वन ऑफ द बिजनेसेस इज लेट्स से इंडिया मार्ट इंटरमेश.
Okay.
सो इट्स अ B2B मार्केट प्लेस बिजनेस फॉर SMEs.
Right.
ठीक है, तो काइंड ऑफ अ प्लेटफॉर्म बिजनेस है, और इसके अंदर बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे इंक्यूबेशन हैं, बहुत छोटे बिजनेसेस हैं.
Yes.
So the business is currently, let's say, available at 12,000 crore market cap.
Right.
And because the business earns very high return on invested capital, so it throws a lot of cash. तो बैलेंस शीट में 3,000 करोड़ का कैश है.
Right.
So essentially the business is available at 9,000 crore.
Right.
And इसका जो फ्री कैश फ्लो इस साल है that was around 700 crore.
Okay.
ठीक है, चलो आप उसका नॉर्मलाइज कर लो, बिकॉज यूजुअली क्या होता है, द बिजनेस इज नॉट गोइंग थ्रू अ गुड फेज राइट नाउ, काइंड ऑफ स्लो डाउन बिकॉज ऑफ सम इंटरनल प्रॉब्लम्स. बट उसके बाद अगर आप उसको लेट्स से नॉर्मलाइज करके 600 करोड़ भी हम पकड़ते हैं, सो द 9,000 करोड़ इज द मार्केट वैल्यू एंड 600 करोड़ इज द फ्री कैश फ्लो. अब मैंने जो आपको फॉर्मूला बताया था, लेट्स एज्यूम कि मार्केट इज राइट एंड दिस इज द ट्रू वैल्यू और इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू ऑफ द बिजनेस,
Right.
9,000 crore, and the free cash flow is 600. Let's say my cost of capital is 12%.
Right.
So now the only variable is the long term growth.
Growth.
So
Right.
I can tell what kind of long term growth rate market is expecting from this business. तो अगर आप ये कैलकुलेशन करोगे with 9,000 crore, 600 crore of free cash flow, 12% cost of capital, so you'll see कि long term growth rate market is expecting is only 5% or 4-5%.
Right.
ठीक है, now you will have to go back to the business analysis and you will have to see whether the market is right or not. If you think in
Right.
your assumptions that
Right.
the market is wrong, this can grow at more than 5%, and what are the reasons, what are the triggers, then it is basically undervalued.
Right.
and then it makes a margin of safety for you to buy this.
Right.
If you agree with the market or you think यार नहीं यार 5% भी ज़्यादा है, this could not grow because these are the competitions, all these things, whatever business analysis you have done. So basically it's a triangulation. आपने business पढ़ा and then आपने reverse receive किया in a way. Basically you see what the market is expecting.
Got it.
Based on that, based on your understanding of the business, you will make a decision. So these are a kind of few.
When you say long-term growth rate, what's the time period that
Very long term. मतलब basically जो intrinsic value है, that is the present value of the all the future cash flow streams जब तक business रहेगा, right? So at some point क्या होगा कि every business has some growth phases.
So you've told us about the 4 tenets you see when you analyze a business. So I'm just curious, generally, how do you screen for companies? Do you go at the numbers first and then look at the business, or are you trying to study different businesses and then numbers are something that you come to at the last?
See, both things are correct basically. First of all, I'm trying to screen for quality.
Okay.
So by quality I do not mean Asian Paints only, because people usually imply quality with Asian Paints. It could be a micro cap. You
Okay.
never know. What I'm looking at as the quality at the matrix that I'm searching
Right.
for, right? So first of all, I want the screening criteria would be that I want to screen for businesses that convert profit to cash.
Okay.
Right? So that should be the first criteria, because you are earning profits and it is not converting to cash.
Right.
Then there is no point, right?
Right.
जैसे मैंने अभी आपको केन्स का एग्जांपल दिया. So it is basically it is declaring profits, but cash flow जो है वो नहीं आ रहा है.
Right.
Everything is in the receivables.
Right.
So पहले क्राइटेरिया ये होना चाहिए. सेकंड क्राइटेरिया होना चाहिए that it should be a high return on invested capital business.
Right.
And then you try to, और उसके बाद आपके पास जो भी आपका यूनिवर्स है, then you try to look for the price. If you have a quality business and you get it at a discount, then it becomes a good basically investment candidate. तो आपको मैं एक सिंपल एग्जांपल देता हूँ कि लेट्स से एक बिजनेस, लेट्स से उसका EPS 10 years में 3x हो जाता है, राइट? एंड उसका प्राइस टू अर्निंग जो है दैट बिकम्स 3x in 10 years again.
Okay.
Right? So that business will basically be over a period of 10 years, it will be 9x, not 6x,
9x.
right?
Right.
So we are looking for a business. जरूरी नहीं है कि उसमें बहुत high growth हो. There could be high growth, there could be some examples. I can share some example where high growth was there. So basically screening का तो यही है. Otherwise क्या है कि across the market businesses तो पड़ते ही हैं.
Right.
So you will look at every business and basically जो एक इन्वेस्टर है उसका रोल यही है कि you will have to eliminate most of the things.
Right.
So 90% of the things will get eliminated just at the screening. कि यहाँ पर कैश कन्वर्ट नहीं हो रहा है, यहाँ पर द बिजनेस डज नॉट हैव द यूनिट इकोनॉमीज दैट यू आर लुकिंग फॉर, या लॉन्ग टर्म प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स नहीं है या एनीथिंग. सो दीज आर द थिंग्स दैट बेसिकली वी आर स्क्रीनिंग.
Can you tell me some of the best hits and some of the misses in your portfolio? What has worked? Again, the purpose is not to pick on those stocks, but to just understand your thought process.
Right. Yeah, so I don't think I have made anything like 50x or something. So मतलब क्या है कि there could be a lot of small winners and
Right.
there could be also some losers there. But I can talk about some examples. जैसे for example एक company है that is Tips Music.
Okay.
So Tips Music basically it was a spin-off from the film business.
Right.
So फिल्म बिजनेस की जो यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स है दैट इज़ नॉट वेरी ग्रेट,
Hmm.
क्योंकि कैपिटल इंटेंसिव बिजनेस है.
Right.
और म्यूजिक बिजनेस में एक्चुअली इट इज़ क्वाइट द ऑपोजिट. सो द बिजनेस वाज मेकिंग सम 400% ROIC.
400%.
हाँ, या. सो एंड
And this was over years, not a one-off.
yeah,
Okay.
because of the economics of the business.
Okay.
So I'll tell you why. And second thing is it was growing at some 30-35%, right? And this is usually a recipe of very high value business.
Right.
Because you have high, अगर आप उसको इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू का फॉर्मूला जो हमने डिस्कस किया था उसमें भी डालोगे,
Right.
तो यू विल सी कि वारंटेड मल्टीपल विल बी वेरी हाई. बट दिस कंपनी वाज ट्रेडिंग एट सम 25-27 टाइम्स अर्निंग्स
Okay.
ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ मल्टीपल टाइम्स बिटवीन 2021, 22, 23
Okay.
दिस टाइम. ठीक है. सो इस बिजनेस में सबसे वन ऑफ द गुड थिंग्स अबाउट द बिजनेस इज दैट इसमें एंट्री बैरियर्स बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग है. इट्स अ कैटलॉग बिजनेस बेसिकली।
Right.
आपके पास कितने सॉन्ग्स का कैटलॉग है? सो द टिप्स यूज टू हैव some 30,000 songs catalog,
Okay.
and the other competitors were listed competitor was Saregama. उसके उसका जो कैटलॉग था दैट वाज 5x दैट ऑफ टिप्स।
Right.
1,50,000 के आसपास सॉन्ग्स थे उसके पास।
Okay.
ऑलराइट, बट अगर आप उनका यूट्यूब सब्सक्रिप्शन एंड यूट्यूब व्यूज़ वगैरह देखेंगे तो यू विल फाइंड दैट टिप्स कंटेंट वाज मच मोर रेलेवेंट देन सारेगामा,
Saregama. Okay.
even though they had a bigger catalog.
Right.
ठीक है, and also Saregama had a lot of unrelated diversification. They had music licensing business, they had film business, they also had hardware business. वो कारवान बनाते हैं, वो बहुत होता है, yeah.
Right.
And then with the cash they were generating, they had some I mean acquisitions which were not related to music licensing.
Got it.
So that was the thing. Now the business was making very high ROIC
Right.
because the सबसे पहले तो जो आपका बेस है,
हाँ.
denominator है, that is very small. A business is a content business basically.
Right.
तो कंटेंट में एक चीज़ आपको समझनी पड़ेगी कि इट्स अ परपेचुअल एन्युटी।
Right.
कंटेंट अगर आपने बना दिया एक बार और इट्स रिलेवेंट,
Right.
तो जैसे जैसे स्ट्रीमिंग पाई बड़ी होगी यू विल कीप गेटिंग द रॉयल्टी।
Right.
राइट, सो व्हाट वाज हैपनिंग वाज दैट द स्ट्रीमिंग एप्स वेर बिकमिंग मोर पॉपुलर,
Right.
डेटा वाज चीप,
Right.
एवरीबडी हैज़ अ स्मार्टफोन, 5G रोल आउट हो गया था।
Right.
So this was becoming kind of a obvious thing. The industry itself was growing at some 12-15%.
Right.
And this company was growing at 30-35% क्योंकि इनके पास content है. So they could renegotiate. जब उनका contract खत्म होता है तो they could renegotiate better prices.
Got it.
Second, it is kind of a big kind of platform business, तो इसमें operating leverage है because cost same है आपकी.
Right.
They are operating with some less than 100 employees.
Right.
Right. So कंटेंट मतलब आपका फिक्स कॉस्ट सेम है, कंटेंट की कॉस्ट वंस इन अ वाइल आएगी। दैट वाज बेसिकली कंटेंट उनका ऑलरेडी बहुत अच्छा था।
Right.
सो दैट इज़ व्हाई दे वर मेकिंग वेरी हाई आरओआईसी एंड दे वर मेकिंग बेसिकली दे वर ग्रोइंग एट 30-35%।
Wow.
सो देन व्हाई मार्केट वाज नॉट गिविंग अ मल्टीपल? पहली चीज़ ये थी कि देयर वाज अ गवर्नेंस ओवरहैंग इन द बिजनेस,
Got it.
क्योंकि जो प्रमोटर है, प्रमोटर पे एक क्रिमिनल केस था फ्रॉम अ वेरी वेरी ओल्ड केस फ्रॉम टी सीरीज टाइम्स।
Okay.
बट गवर्नमेंट ने उनको बेसिकली एक्विट कर दिया था।
Okay.
सो सॉरी, गवर्नमेंट बोल रहा हूँ मैं, द कोर्ट हैज़ एक्विटेड देम
Got it.
ऑलरेडी, राइट? सो दैट वाज देयर, बट maybe market was giving them some governance discount.
Okay.
And second thing was probably it's a thing that in India usually people do not like to pay for subscription and all.
Hmm.
Maybe that was the thing because it was just not that apparent at that time.
Got it.
But if you look at it, even I had YouTube Premium, Spotify, because
Right.
you know क्या होता है कि ad intensity बढ़ते जा रही है time के साथ,
Yes.
and at some point it becomes unbearable.
Yes.
And now if you see, the subscription is a knob. I mean, everybody has subscription, right?
I think in one of these platforms they have two layers of subscription where if you take the first layer you will still see ads
Yeah.
but lesser, and then if you really want ads free then you have to pay really top money.
And music is kind of a necessity in a
हाँ.
way, so you will have to deal with it, right?
Right.
So then subscription thing became quite apparent over
Right.
time, right? And subscription के साथ एक चीज़ क्या होती है कि एक तो इनका जो फ्री एड्स वाला कंटेंट होता है,
हाँ.
उसमें इनको कुछ रॉयल्टी रेट मिलता है।
Right.
एंड देन कम्स दी जैसे जैसे आपकी जो स्ट्रीमिंग ऐप्स है, जैसे स्पॉटिफाई है, जैसे जैसे उसका सब्सक्रिप्शन बढ़ता जा रहा है,
Right.
सो दे आर गेटिंग मोर रेवेन्यूज फ्रॉम सब्सक्रिप्शन।
Right.
सो इनके रॉयल्टी रेट्स भी बढ़ते जाते हैं उसके साथ,
Okay.
एंड द यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स इज मच बेटर। सो अगर आप
हाँ.
जो मैं आपको 400% ROIC बोल रहा हूँ, दैट विल बी इवन मच हायर टुडे,
Really?
बिकॉज द सब्सक्रिप्शन की वजह से जो यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स है दैट इज गेटिंग इवन स्ट्रॉन्गर।
Got it.
So that was one of the things that I think that I found out, and that actually clicked,
Wow.
and that did well for me. So it was a मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि high growth and it's not a no thing for looking, मतलब it's not a वो buy करना है, the purpose of an investor is to buy things for less than what they are worth.
So you're saying you have made money on something like tips even though the headline, I mean the bottom line has not really multiplied over years, but the business itself has been so efficiently run that the stock eventually.
No, bottom line has picked up a lot, no? The bottom line
Okay.
has picked up. So basically the thing is that the market's perception for it was
Ah,
not that
okay.
good. Yeah.
Right.
So market was not, maybe they were discounting corporate governance, maybe they were
Right.
they're discounting that the growth will not sustain because of the subscriptions
Right.
and so. But it was quite apparent because I was also a user, so
Right.
that was there. इसके अलावा देयर आर लॉट ऑफ अदर थिंग, जैसे दिस वाज अ हाई ग्रोथ बिजनेस, अनदर वाज अ, लेट्स से इफ आई टॉक अबाउट स्वराज इंजन्स.
Right.
So Swaraj Engines, this business has been growing at some 10-11% kind of growth. Margins have been rock steady over the years.
Okay.
And unit economics, again, this makes 70% ROIC, incremental ROIC.
Okay.
And they do not need to reinvest anything at all.
Right.
Not anything at all, literally, sorry, but they only need to reinvest very little, 10-20% of their earnings.
Okay.
And they have a mandate of giving it back to the shareholders. Whatever PAT they make, between 65 to 90% of the profit, they give it back to shareholders in terms
Okay.
of dividends. So back then when I was looking at it, so dividend yield was something around 6.5%.
Okay.
And the business was growing at 10%.
Okay.
So if this continues, I can still compound at some 15-16%, right?
Right.
Even if nothing happens.
Yes.
And then when I was looking at the data, so the diesel engine realizations were going up.
Okay.
Because जैसे जैसे mechanization हो रहा है, higher HP engines आ रहे हैं. So now there are, cost realizations were going up.
Got it.
Second thing was that it is a subsidiary of M&M. Back then it was Kirloskar and M&M JV, but then
Okay.
later M&M took the entire thing.
Right.
So back then, basically M&M was starting to take the market share in the tractor market.
Got it.
So that was quite apparent.
Got
So slowly their growth started inflecting.
Right.
And इस साल तो आई थिंक some 18-20% they have grown.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in general अगर आप वैसे भी देखो तो 5-6% अगर आपके ट्रैक्टर इंडस्ट्री की ग्रोथ है, एंड इफ M&M is growing at some 2-3%, and there is some engine realization improvement,
Right.
so I could make sense of that 8-10% growth तो आ ही जाएगी.
Okay.
Plus I have some 6% dividend yield,
Dividend yield.
and the business was available at only 11-12 times earnings.
Right. So business was available at 11-12 times. So that is very important because then you can sort of assume that the derating risk is very less.
Yes.
So the business will at least move as per the earnings.
Yeah, so even in both examples, if you see, in my view, the derating risk was nominal.
Huh.
Because even a business like Tips should not trade at 25 times earnings.
Right.
Yeah, same goes with SDFC AMC. So this was at some point also available at 25 times earnings. So the unit economics of the business is such that basically it's a infinite ROE business. क्योंकि
Right.
अगर आप उसके नेटवर्थ देखोगे, नेटवर्थ is less than the basically the total cash and investments. So basically it is running on negative investment invested
Yes.
capital.
Yes.
So these type of businesses with such metrics should not trade at very low multiples. Same thing with this. यहाँ पर growth कम थी Swaraj Engines, but more or less the template was similar.
Got it.
So this went to like 35-40 times earnings, I guess.
Wow. Okay.
At some point, और growth भी थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा आ गई.
Right.
So overall I think it, मतलब वही है कि छोटे छोटे 2-3x are in a very short period are
Right.
good to have. So these are.
And how do you decide that now I exit it? Is it
So yeah, this is one of the things. I would think that my selling framework is not that tight as of now, because I see a lot of leakage whenever I sell. Sometimes the market feedback is such that I think I made a mistake. So usually what I do is कि let's say I have invested 5% of my portfolio,
right?
and let's say it becomes 20%. 20% is the threshold kind of thing.
Got it.
उसके ऊपर थोड़ा मेरे को comfort नहीं आता.
Okay.
So I start trimming it. Sometimes I sell the entire business if the valuation,
Got it.
I feel valuation discomfort. But what happens is sometimes कि market immediately gives you a feedback. कि एक business था called Anup Engineering.
Right.
So वो business मैंने बहुत सस्ता खरीदा था in right after COVID.
Okay.
और वो अरविंद लिमिटेड से, इट वाज अ स्पिन ऑफ फ्रॉम द अरविंद लिमिटेड, जो वो टेक्सटाइल बिजनेस है. दिस वाज इंजीनियरिंग सब, मतलब
Right.
ये प्रोसेस इक्विपमेंट्स बनाते हैं, कैपिटल गुड्स बिजनेस है.
Okay.
सो दिस स्टार्टेड ट्रेडिंग एट सम 40 टाइम्स अर्निंग्स, और मैंने 8-9 के पी पे लिया था इसे.
Right.
सो आई कुड नॉट मेक सेंस ऑफ द मल्टीपल्स,
Got it.
बट आई शुड हैव लुक्ड एट द ओवरऑल पिक्चर वंस अगेन, बिकॉज व्हाट काइंड ऑफ केपेक्स वी आर गोइंग थ्रू. सो मैंने वो पूरा सेल कर दिया, एंड विद इन आई थिंक विद इन लेस देन अ ईयर
Right.
it more than doubled from there.
Right.
So I thought I made a good decision, but so these are some of the things that you need to fix. But वही है कि अब मैं थोड़ा staggered way में करता हूँ. जैसे one of the gold lenders that I bought a few years ago, तो उसका भी यही हुआ था कि वो थोड़ा ऊपर चला गया था weightage.
Okay.
So I trimmed it. So now I stagger my selling.
Okay.
So मेरे ख्याल से यही है, these are the things that I think I need to fix.
Fantastic. I think we are near the end of the session. What's one advice that, let's say there's a young analyst watching this show, right?
Mm.
Is there one piece of advice, one book, or one person that you would recommend them to follow or to? Uh,
See, I cannot recommend one person or one book because everybody has different personality.
Right.
Everybody there's different styles. But one thing that I can tell from my own mistakes is that एक होती है एंकरिंग बायस कि समटाइम्स वी गेट फिक्सेटेड टू सर्टेन थिंग्स कि मैं ये नहीं करूँगा.
Right.
सो ये नहीं होना चाहिए. आई थिंक कीप सम ओपन माइंड. आई हैव रियलाइज्ड इट अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स कि कभी ऐसा होता है कि मैंने 5,000 करोड़ पे बिजनेस पढ़ के छोड़ दिया.
Right.
एंड नेक्स्ट ईयर नाउ दिस इज एंकर्ड इन माई ब्रेन कि यार ये तो अब 10,000 करोड़ में हो गया है. तो
Absolutely.
नाउ इवन दो द अर्निंग्स हैव कैच अप और कॉट अप
Right.
एंड इट इज़ स्टिल चीपर.
Right.
बट माइंड में एक एंकर बन जाता है कि यार जब मैंने 5,000 मनी. सो कीप एन ओपन माइंड एंड ऑल्सो डोंट से कि मैं ये नहीं करूँगा, मैं वो नहीं करूँगा. इट्स जस्ट दैट कीप योर फ्रेमवर्क वेरी टाइट विद इन दैट फ्रेमवर्क. जैसे फ्रेमवर्क क्या है कि मैं आई विल जनरली नॉट इन्वेस्ट इन बिजनेसेस जहाँ पर दे आर नॉट मेकिंग मतलब क्वालिटी बिजनेसेस जो लो क्वालिटी बिजनेसेस हैं. जैसे
When you say quality, you mean earnings quality, as in not product quality, or are
नो
you
नो नो
saying the
बाय क्वालिटी व्हाट आई मीन इज कि जैसे मैंने बोला कि द बफेट्स टेस्ट
हाँ.
इज व्हाट इज अ गुड बिजनेस.
हाँ.
So the greatest business, he said, Seas Candy is the great business.
Okay.
Not even good. He said great. He said the prototype of a great business is Seas Candy,
Okay.
which requires very less capital and it continues to grow without
हाँ.
requiring any capital. So
Right.
that is the quality basically.
Hmm.
So that is the thing. But sometimes it happens that sometimes if you even you little bit make it flexible. तो
Right.
वही है कि flexibility is one thing that one should have.
Got it.
बट ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि यू स्टार्ट ट्रेडिंग कि यार अब
हाँ.
मतलब यू जस्ट गेट इन एंड आउट इन एवरी वीक.
Got
ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. यू शुड हैव अ टाइट फ्रेमवर्क. विद इन दैट यू शुड अलाउ योर सेल्फ टू हैव लिटिल मोर फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी.
Got it.
जैसे मेरे साथ ये है कि आई हैव नॉट इन्वेस्टेड इन सर्टेन टाइप ऑफ बिजनेसेस एंड दैट हैव डन वेरी वेल. सो मे बी जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल MCX है. आई वॉज टॉकिंग विद सम ऑफ द फ्रेंड्स. तो जब ये STT वाला जब न्यूज़ आई थी तो इट वाज क्वाइट अपरेंट कि यार ये तो मतलब फालतू में पिट गया.
हाँ.
क्योंकि CTT पे तो कोई
हाँ.
वो लगा नहीं था.
Yeah.
राइट. सो एंड फ्रॉम देयर आई थिंक इट हैज़ डबल्ड नाउ. बट वैल्यूएशन का भी था उसमें. बट स्टिल इट कुड हैव बीन
Right.
प्लेड विद लेट्स से आई कुड हैव मेड अ this thing in my mind that चलो ठीक है, I can make a small satellite portfolio and maybe
Right.
let's see what happens.
Right.
So थोड़ा सा flexibility होनी चाहिए, but also you should not deviate from your framework too much. So
Got
that
it.
is it.
Fantastic. I think we've had a lot of insights over the last few minutes, right from your reading of the market to your method of reading stocks, your method of reading businesses.
Yeah.
And thank you very, very much for being here and for sharing your insights with our viewers. Where can they follow you? What's your Twitter handle at?
My Twitter handle goes by @wizardsunknown.
Wizards Unknown.
Yes.
Right. So we'll also be displaying it on the
Sure. Thank
on
you.
the screen.
And it would be great if you can display that intrinsic value thing.
Sure. This.
And see, I wish you and Seco Wealth all the very best for your future. And I hope you serve your clients very well with your knowledge of the market and understanding of the cycles. So all the very best.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.